Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the boys are back in town. It's the Wrestling Inc. Thursday show where we chat all about the news. And if we got a doozy of an episode for you this week, my name's Jack Farmer. His name is Raj Giri. Raj, welcome back, buddy. It's been so long.
Yeah, it's my last episode, man, today until next week. So let's make it a good one.
Yeah, the last episode meaning as in the most recent episode.
Yeah. No, me and Wrestling Inc. worked out a deal. So, yeah, I feel like I said it on Twitter. It's like Congress the night before, the debt hits the fan.
Right. Yeah, I think in pro wrestling, you have joined now the ranks of the MJFs and the Brock Lesnars and all those guys who just find a way to get what they want from their contract, threaten to leave, and then you get everything you want. It's you're right up there with them, Raj.
I've learned from the best. So.
I absolutely love it. We already got a bunch of folks in the chat here. Jeffrey Sullivan, Samantha, Gluten Free, Tut Graff. We got Tony and Tijaro Pendergrass. I'll just call you Pendergrass. Thank you guys so Noel as well. Thanks so much for joining us in the chat as we get started. Make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe. But yeah, I think I speak for everyone, at least based on what Twitter's saying. We're glad you're back, Raj. Everyone was bummed out you were leaving. Everyone was wondering what the world would be like in a world post Raj. They're like, we can get by with Vince leaving WWE, but Raj leaving Wrestling Inc. That's just madness.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. It's great to be back. It's great to be here talking with you because there's a lot going on, man.
Yeah, I got one more leaving and coming back reference. I'm only on episode 2 of this season of Succession, but you're just pulling a Logan Roy here. And as soon as we think that you're beat, you come back stronger than ever.
Right. And then he croaks. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, no.
You know, I heard that one already. That was already spoiled for me, so I already knew it was coming.
Cut that out.
Yeah.
People that haven't seen it.
So yeah, it was spoiled for me already, so I know it's coming. But in any case, Logan, I'm sure he'll find a way to come back by the end of the season. Anyway,
he was back a couple episodes later in a way. So
he'll never be done. I think he'll keep on kicking. But in any case, let's talk about the news. Let's talk about some really big news in the going on right now. AEW and Warner Bros. Discovery are reportedly set to announce a new exclusive TV deal. According to Wrestling Observer, AEW and Warner Bros. Discovery are set to announce a new TV rights deal as part of Warner Bros. Discovery's upfront presentations next week, and AEW and Warner Bros. Discovery will reportedly announce the new deal, which is said to include an announcement about the forthcoming AEW Collision program. The news of a possible new TV deal coming at the same time as the historic ticket sales in Wembley has made for a great month for the fledgling promotion. With no word on how All In is set to be broadcast, many look to the upcoming upfronts to possibly give a clue as to whether the show will be a traditional pay-per-view, a televised special, or even possibly streamed on the Max platform that is set to replace HBO Max. AEW has also been considering their own streaming service. So lots of stuff to unpack there, but Raj, let's start at the very top. Sounds like good news for AEW for all the hand-wringing everyone's been having about woe is me and ratings in AEW. Sounds like they're still getting money.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic news for AEW. And, AEW, they feel like they're on a bit of a roll right now. And we're going to talk about ratings here soon. And in a vacuum, this week's rating, if you just look at it individually, it's you wouldn't be blown away. But when you consider how great they did this week or the numbers that they did this week compared to what they've been doing, especially with the competition that they had, I thought it was one of the most impressive ratings that they've done this year so far. They were up against the Trump Town Hall, 2 big NBA games. So, and Vanderpump Rules, which I'd never heard of until like this last 6 months, but apparently it's gigantic right now. So.
Yeah, Vanderpump Rules is a popular show. I don't watch it. I don't really know what it's about, but I hear people discuss it all the time. I see it come across my timeline all the time. But yeah, so it sounds like things are good for AEW. They're chugging along. And again, we'll talk about the ratings in a second. But let's talk about Collision. I feel like we all know a whole bunch about Collision for it having not actually been announced in any way. Raj, are we starting to make up stuff here, or is there some real reality to AEW Collision?
Oh yeah, it's for sure happening. I mean, that's almost that's what Tony Khan is announcing next week. Now, whether he announces CM Punk is coming back on that show, I think he probably will. I think we're close enough now that it's worth making that announcement. They're making the announcement at the upfronts next week about Collision, so obviously that's going to be part of it. CM Punk, I'm assuming they'll probably announce that as well, and look, it's Punk. He moves numbers. AEW numbers got a huge jolt when he came back. They subsided once he got injured, and they didn't really come back once he came back from his injury for that short period. But he's been out long enough that hopefully they have something big for him. And yeah, I think it'll be a huge deal. It was interesting, Chris Jericho making that reference with the Roderick Strong promo about lawsuit and he can't be in the building. I think that's a kind of an inside joke with some of the stuff going on with Punk. But
right,
yeah.
And Jericho loves those kind of little inside things for people who are going to get it to really get it. But let me ask you this, because Collision Saturday sounds great. CM Punk coming back sounds great. But let's talk about All In and what they mentioned here in the article, which is up on WrestlingInc.com. Now, they talk about how we don't know how we're going to watch All In. Is it going to be traditional pay-per-view, televised specials, streaming? Any insight or thoughts on how we may be consuming AEW in the future? Is it possible that it'll make the jump to streaming or be a part of Max, do you think?
Well, in the Max, on their earnings call, I mean, they flat out said they want more sports, they want more streaming. All In seems to me to be the perfect show to start that with. They have a pay-per-view the following week. Obviously, they could do 2 pay-per-views in a week. I don't think that's the best idea. I think this All In show be a great way to get the Max thing, cooking, getting their viewers in and subscribing. HBO, obviously, we already talked about Succession. They have one of the best shows on TV already on there. HBO is one of the most prestigious channels of all time. So, I mean, it's huge. I mean, this whole deal is huge for AEW. And if they're able to move the pay-per-views on, I was just looking at math. And if you consider, let's say, the current TV deal, let's throw out Battle of the Belts. It's $45 million per year, plus or minus some change. If you say like 80% of that is Dynamite, 20% is Rampage. So that's $36 million a year. That's Dynamite, and $9 million that's Rampage, right?
Yeah.
And if they consider Collision another Dynamite, meaning that the same kind of value to the network, then you're taking 36 times 2. That's $72 million a year, plus the $9 million for Rampage. Sorry if the math is all over the place, but just following along, just looking at current numbers and with the current deal, adding Collision, kind of putting it at like $80 million a year is kind of what the current package would be worth, assuming that Collision and Dynamite are kind of on the same level. So you think of just current rates, $80 million. If they're to get just double that, that's $160 million a year. And if you add on pay-per-views, right now, AEW, basically they gross about $10 million a pay-per-view. So that's, and they keep half because half goes to the cable providers. So they keep 5, but let's just say a pay-per-view is worth 10. They move those 5 pay-per-views to Max at current rates. That's, $50 million a year. Even at current rates on top of that $160 million. Anyway, the bottom line is this should be a pretty lucrative deal, especially if they're moving pay-per-views onto Max. And easily, when people were saying there are rumors $1 billion, and people were like, what? That's ridiculous. And I'm looking at the numbers. I'm like, it's really not, especially if they're moving pay-per-views. That's $200 million a year. That's less than what Raw gets, from their deal, 4 years ago, 3 years, whenever that was negotiated.
Yeah.
So it's not really that crazy to think that they could do that. And that's a huge feather in the cap for AEW if they can get that amount, because now they can not only keep a lot of their big name talent, but they could go after some of the really big names with WWE. They don't have the same kind of overhead that WWE has, but obviously WWE is also going to get a much bigger rights fee, presumably. So it's interesting times ahead.
Yeah, and it will give. I think it's a good move to do away with Dark and then sort of make Rampage their new place where new people are showcased, and Collision and Dynamite being more of their AA shows. But let me ask you, Raj, for Collision, of course, Dynamite was great. They added Rampage, and we've seen that Rampage has sort of fallen off. What does AEW, in your opinion, need to do to avoid Collision becoming Rampage Part 2?
Well, I do like the idea of kind of having different rosters in a way, where you can only see Punk this night, or you can only see Omega this other night. I didn't like the reason why they're doing it, where the wrestlers are dictating the terms, and I can't be in the same building as this guy.
Right.
But outside of that, I think having it where it's not the same show 2 nights a week, I think is a good idea. Now, what we've seen so far with AEW is anytime they add something like Rampage, Battle of the Belts, they come off strong and then they decline pretty quickly. So they need to go out of their way to make the show feel like an A show every week. And if Punk and the Elite can't work together and can't be around each other, automatically that Punk being on the Saturday night show doesn't really help the Wednesday night show. And there is the reports that it might not be, a hard split, that some weeks Punk might be on Dynamite and maybe the Elite on Collision. But I think it seems like a big headache to have to plan out way in advance what shows Punk can be on, and then these people can't be on that show. But and I think that's something that could come and bite them in the ass, and something I feel like they really need to get solved. And it seems like they can't. Otherwise, they would have by now.
Yeah.
But having the rosters and not the same wrestlers on the same 2 shows every week, I think is a big way to go, to make it feel like you need to watch the other show and it's not just a continuation of the Wednesday show.
I like that. And I do think that one of the things I think might be a downside to the whole roster thing is it's also a bit of a bummer if I'm watching and CM Punk comes out, I'm going to know, oh, well, I guess I'm not seeing any of the Elite guys today, or vice versa. If the Bucks come out, I guess I'm not getting Punk today, which might be a bad thing as well, because that kills some of the fun and excitement of watching the show. Who's going to come out? Who am I going to see? I'd love to just see some sort of consistency too, as far as who is presented with regularity, even if it's not. I always said, with Lucha Underground, one of the things I liked about it is you didn't see the same guys every week, but you'd see the same guys every 3 weeks, and so you kind of knew, okay, I saw this guy, I saw Pentagon, I like him, probably won't be on the next 2 episodes, but we'll be on the 3rd one after that. You know what I mean? I knew that there was a cadence to it, so I knew how often I'd get people. I'm just hoping there's some sort of, even if it's not every single week, I see someone, I'm just hoping that I can go, okay, Hobbs was on this week. I may not see him next week, but I know within the next 2 or 3 weeks, he'll be back and they'll continue. And I can sort of know what's going on with him, as opposed to he's on, he disappears for a month, comes back, disappears for 6 weeks, on every week for 3 weeks in a row, then gone for 4 months, So that'll be what I hope to see out of that. But we're talking about CM Punk. Let's talk about what CM Punk has planned when he comes back, or what they have planned for CM Punk. And everyone in the chat, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on who you'd like to see CM Punk face when he comes back, excluding the Elite, because I think that's low hanging fruit. Let's give me something spicy. If you couldn't do it the Elite, who would you like to see him work with? Fightful Select was reporting that Jericho has been proposed as the person that CM Punk will be facing coming back. But according to Fightful Select, CM Punk has actually been pitching for nearly a month to have a match with Samoa Joe, and says that Punk is increasingly interested in that option. I personally would be happy to see either of them. I think I'd go Jericho over Joe, just because I think Joe needs to start racking up some TV wins before he's in a rivalry with CM Punk. But what about you, Raj? What do you think about this story?
Well, and just Samoa Joe, that's, just a minute ago when you were talking about people disappearing from TV for months. And Joe is one of those. He lost the TV title and he's been off of AEW TV. I know he's been on ROH, and there's been plenty of people that are on ROH that are still on AEW, like Wheeler Yuta. But I would go, the reason I'd go with Joe is because I feel like Jericho is something you should save for All In or the pay-per-view. I feel like that's a pay-per-view match. And again, it depends how they go. If Jericho loses to Adam Cole, which makes sense, he probably should.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden, Jericho and Punk is more of a TV match. But if he wins or he starts getting some big wins, I'd take that back. Regardless, Jericho and Punk is still a pay-per-view match. And it's arguably the two biggest names in the company going against each other. So at least to like outside fans and the most well-known, it's Punk and Jericho. I don't think Moxley or Danielson are quite up there.
And I think what I like
Sting
about
is, but I'm not.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah, he's known, but his role isn't exactly something that it works in that way. But what I love about Jericho as the option here is Jericho, I think, can lose. I think he's at a place where he could lose a million times and he's still Chris Jericho.
Right.
And so I think he'll still be fine. But also because of the character he plays, even if you're on the fence about CM Punk coming back or you're not happy with CM Punk coming back, I think Jericho will still get people to cheer for CM Punk and position CM Punk where they want him to be in that situation. And like you said, I think it's just box office. I think that looks like a big matchup on TV that sells tickets. That's something, if I told my friend who only peeks into wrestling like during Royal Rumble season, he'll go, oh yeah, I know who those guys are. I want to check them out. So I think in that way it works all around. I think with Joe's one of my all-time favorites, but yeah, I want to see Joe winning regularly before he's in that situation. Because otherwise this feels sort of like a random, okay, CM Punk and Samoa Joe. Okay. I mean, it'll be cool, but
right.
It's like saying CM Punk versus Claudio Castagnoli. Yeah. Claudio and CM Punk will probably be great. Don't know why they're in a match, but
right. Okay. If you're getting two big names, you'd kind of hope that there's at least a couple of weeks build. I know some people hate when I say that, but I don't think having a build to a big match is a bad thing. So I think that that would be ideal. But I also understand the first episode, you want to start it off with a bang, but just CM Punk cutting a promo is starting it off with a bang. Look at the first Rampage with, it was like the second or third or whatever. But when CM Punk returned, all you needed was him to talk for 20 minutes, and they did their biggest number ever.
I mean, I think at this point, CM Punk, you could just say he's going to walk to the ring like Lacey Evans. He's going to walk to the ring, turn around, and walk back. And we'd all be like, okay, I'll tune in because CM Punk draws those numbers. You know what I mean? Couldn't do that every week. But I think for the first time back, people are starved for CM Punk. They're hungry for him. We'll take whatever you give us, I think, at this point. So, yeah, I don't think you need to necessarily blow the doors off with his first time back. If I wanted to be an instigator, Raj, if I want to stir the pot a little bit, I want to get a little controversial here, or however you'd phrase it. Should I be worried if I'm AEW that I'm saying, hey, we like the idea of you versus Chris Jericho. You guys talked. You're going to work together. You guys said you'll work together. This is awesome. And then he comes back and says, reportedly, I'd rather work with Samoa Joe. That's who I want. Is that sort of a red flag?
No, because I think there's a difference between a return opponent and a return feud. You can, the return opponent will probably happen I'm guessing pretty quickly, whereas the return feud is down the road. You don't want to do that match right away. So I see a difference between those two.
Yeah. I mean, for the record, like I said, I'd love Samoa Joe and CM Punk. I like Samoa Joe. I want Samoa Joe to get some wins, Raj.
Yeah. Yeah. Real quick to Justine A in the chat. I'm sorry to hear about that. I hope you're feeling better.
Yep. Thoughts are with you, Justine. Appreciate you making the time to tune in to us as well. But let's talk a bit about the ratings, because this is what this all comes down to: ratings. NXT ratings came in and they averaged 601,000 viewers across the show. Approximately 222,000 were key demo, putting up at a 0.17. Dynamite, on the other hand, had 877,000 viewers with 417,000 in the key demo for a 0.32. This is good news, I think, all around. This was a great number for NXT, but also Dynamite held strong against, as you said earlier, some really tough competition.
Yeah, I mean, real quick with NXT, 601,000 viewers, as you mentioned, despite competition from the NBA and NHL playoffs. Basically, every show kind of has that competition right now. And year over year, NXT was, so in the demo, they did a 0.17 for NXT. And that was tied with March 7th for the second best demo rating so far this year. And again, that's with the crazy competition. And this is kind of crazy. And there's two sides to this, but still, year over year, NXT was up 13% in viewers, which is, that's good. But in the demo, it was up 70% year over year. Now, part of that is they did a good rating this week, but another part of that is that last year, this week, they sucked. They got killed. Yeah. But that is huge. So really impressive numbers for NXT this week.
Where I got to give NXT credit is something I think a lot of us who talk wrestling don't give enough credit to, and that is just the consistency, I think, of NXT. When it made the switch to 2.0, everyone hated it. They were upset about it, but they kept their focus, they kept their vision, they kept plugging away, and they allowed people time to get over with fans. They've allowed wrestlers time to find their place, and you're slowly seeing those ratings creep up. It's not the buzzworthy, surprise signing has now joined and that's going to bump ratings, but it's really just that, I guess, marathon approach that Triple H talked about before of just keep doing a good show, keep it going, and slowly it continues to go up.
Yeah. And it goes back and forth, but yeah, this week it was definitely up. And kind of what you said, year over year, they're up most weeks. It's in the demo. In viewers, it's hit or miss. It's kind of 50-50, but in the demo, they're consistently up year over year. So NXT is drawing a younger crowd than it used to. As for Dynamite, they did, as you said, 877,000 viewers. That's up 13% from last week with a 0.32 18-49 rating. That's up 14% from last week. Number 9 for the night on cable. Again, tough competition with the NBA, NHL. Really tough competition that night with Vanderpump Rules. I want to know who this Vanderpump is. Apparently they rule. And yeah, it was the best audience for the show since April 5th, the best rating, demo rating since March 22nd. So that's all good and all, but with the competition, I actually consider this to be probably the most impressive, or one of the most impressive numbers they've done so far this year. And year over year, because last year at the same time, they were also against the NBA and NHL playoffs. And year over year, they're actually up 4% in viewers. So that's the first time that's happened this year, where they're up year over year in viewers. So that's always a good thing. And the 18-49 demo, it was down 3% year over year, but that is the smallest year over year decrease so far this year. So again, I think it's one of the best numbers they've done so far this year, even if might not be the best. There are several episodes they've done this year that there's been 2 that have cracked 1 million, and a couple others that, have been the high 900,000s, but still this for the competition was really, really good.
Yeah. And I guess also I want to say the talent they have right now, that they're focusing on too is just, I think they have so many stars in NXT 2.0. There's so many people there that, assuming they stick around, are going to be big names. Tiffany Stratton, I think, is someone who is going to be just a huge star once she gets called up. I mean, she's a star now, but I think she's going to be a huge star. Carmelo Hayes, I mean, that guy is just incredible. They just got so many people over there that I think once they start making the moves to the main roster folks should be worried because they've got real talent coming up very soon.
And Braun, as a heel, I think he's gotten so much more interesting. I feel like he had kind of flattened. You knew he was good in the ring, but he wasn't all that interesting. And now he's an interesting character again. And I think Trick Williams, I think, has just, been improving a lot. And he's someone that originally he was really green and you just didn't know if he'd make it. Now when I'm watching him, I'm like, oh, I can see this guy really making it now. He's definitely improving a ton.
Yeah, Trick is going to definitely have a space on the main roster when that time comes as well. I mean, he's in a tough spot because he is in the shadow of Carmelo Hayes right now, who is just incredible. But I think that's helping him. I think he's using that in the best way, and he's helping himself in a lot of ways. Trick will definitely have a place. And you're right. I think Braun was overpowered. He's just an overpowered character on NXT, and it's hard to root for the guy that's overpowered, I always say if it was a video game, his stats were higher than everybody else's. So you're not rooting for him because he's, like if Roman Reigns came down to NXT, you wouldn't be like, yeah, Roman, I'm cheering for you. You'd be like, I hope someone beats him. And so if you're going to be that person that's overpowered, you got to be the bad guy and root for the person to beat him.
And sometimes, you see this a lot in wrestling where people just find themselves when they turn heel. Like if you were to look back when Scott Steiner was in the Steiner Brothers tag team, when he had the long mullet and everything, and he was awesome. One of my favorite tag teams of all time, but you don't really see him as a superstar main event singles guy. But once he turned heel, got the blonde hair and that
chainmail
metal whatever it was awesome. I don't know even how to find it because I don't know what you call it, but
I feel like if you tried to Google it, you'd get a lot of pictures you don't want to look at.
Right, yeah.
Pop it up.
But once he did that, he was a main eventer. He was a superstar. And sometimes it's just turning heel, changing your look. And yeah, I think Braun is on his way.
Yeah, he'll be a star as well. Like I said, NXT, they've got so many just wildly talented people. So very, very good on them. A good pal of mine works there, Nick Bonanno. I'm proud of him and all the work he's doing over there. Just name dropping where I can here. But I think that really kind of does it for the news. It's really a CM Punk heavy episode this week. And again, you can say whatever you want about CM Punk, but he dominates the news, Raj, every time.
And the AEW Warner Bros. TV deal, because that could be one of the biggest stories of the year.
Man, I'm telling you, if wrestling gets onto a streaming service, I'd be so happy. Just whatever streaming service they're on. I think that's just very smart for them in general.
Max all in on Max seems perfect. I mean, all the AEW pay-per-views, you move them over. WWE has shown they make way more doing these shows on Peacock than they did on pay-per-view. So, the model is there, and it's just following it. UFC did it too, except UFC still charges for pay-per-views, even though you can only order the pay-per-view through ESPN Plus. But I think AEW they benefit by seeing what WWE is getting. They're like they can go to Turner and be like, look, WWE got 200 and something million a year for Peacock, and our pay-per-views do this, and we should get 50 million or whatever, or 100. So
I wonder how it would help ratings to have them streaming their shows on Max, let's say for free. Because I was chatting with a pal the other day about how it's a big ask to ask someone to spend $50 to watch a pay-per-view. And if you're not willing to do that 4 times a year with AEW, then are you even watching the show? Like, do you watch wrestling but not watch the pay-per-views? And so if you're not willing to watch the pay-per-views, how much is that cutting off your ratings right off the get-go? Because like if I couldn't watch the pay-per-views and I wasn't covering wrestling, I think I don't want to watch AEW because every time it gets to the good stuff, I can't watch it.
Right. And I think AEW pay-per-views have been averaging 130 to 150,000 buys each time. How many more people are they going to get being able to watch those pay-per-views for $10 a month?
Right.
And again, you see the blueprint with WWE on Peacock. Every show they're doing is the most watched they've ever done. The last Backlash, the most watched Backlash they've ever done. They're in front of a much bigger audience. Being on Peacock and on HBO Max it's going to take me a little bit to get used to saying just Max, but on Max, it's going to be such a bigger audience, new people that could come sample it. It's just a huge opportunity than just, doing your pay-per-views on, Bleacher Report.
Yeah. And big time Baxter with a good comment here. WWE fans may be surfing on Max and possibly get new fans. If you're going there, if you're like me, if you're watching Last of Us or Succession, you see, oh, this new wrestling company. I think I've heard of them. I guess I'll check it out.
Right.
That's a great place to get new people to tune in. And especially the pay-per-views, those are your best shows. You want as many people to see those as possible to get them to tune in more. And
if the first one is all in and, so many lapsed fans, they come on, they go on to HBO Max and they see Sting on there, as one of the featured guys. Like if you were to do Sting's retirement there, you have Sting as one of the featured guys. They're like, oh my gosh, Sting's wrestling, like, hey, I'll put this on. And then they turn it on and it's, 70,000 people or whatever, 70, 80,000 people. You're just like, whoa, this company's legit. Like, even if you've never really heard of AEW, just right away, it just puts in that big major league mentality into your head.
And it's one of those things. Yeah, you see him. Yeah, whatever. Let's say the retirement match for Sting. If you've got Jericho versus CM Punk happening, you're like, oh, I know who these guys are also. And then maybe that's when you get Kenny Omega versus Jon Moxley 3 or whatever whatever it would be at the show. And you're like, oh, I've heard of Moxley, but who's this Kenny Omega guy? Oh, wow, he's incredible. Who's the Acclaimed? Oh, this is fun. Scissor Me Daddy. What's this all about? And you get caught up in the other stuff.
Right. Hey, that's Dean Ambrose. Why is he cutting himself all the time with the razor blade?
We got a quick
step. You got to cut yourself with a razor blade.
Do
it off camera.
His entrance music is still playing. Why is he cutting himself? He hasn't even gotten to the ring yet.
Just kidding. We love Mox.
I'm a huge Mox fan. So Veggie Gamer says, if somehow, some way Seth doesn't win the world title at this point, who do you give it to?
I think you could do Edge, because Edge said when he loses it, he retires. And then you do Edge versus Rollins at SummerSlam in Edge's retirement match, at Ford Field. It's going to be like 50,000 people. And then Edge loses the title, big send-off. I still would rather have Rollins win it at Night of Champions, but you could do it that way, and it would be a cool moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think right now, looking at who is there, I'd have to say I think Rollins should win it. But I agree. I think Edge would probably be the next one. We're getting Justine saying AJ Styles. I'm a huge AJ Styles fan, but he just came back, so he doesn't really have a lot of juice right now, I don't think. You got to pump him up a little bit, I think, with some wins. Veggie Gamer, Edge retirement stip sounds good. And then Tony saying Orton, if not Rollins. I don't know what the deal is with Orton yet.
Well, Orton's not back anytime soon, I don't think. So, and we know the competitors for the SmackDown side, unless they did some swerve on SmackDown where someone got laid out. But we know the 6 of those 6. Realistically, in my opinion, it comes down to Edge, AJ, and Lashley. And of those, since they're doing it in Saudi Arabia, you want the biggest match possible. You want your first World Heavyweight Championship to be a big match, a big name, and to me, Rollins beating Edge is the way to do it.
Yeah, I think so too. I'd go that route. And Rollins, again, if it's not Rollins, I think Edge also has he doesn't feel like a secondary champ if he was to win it. It feels like he's a legend. It doesn't feel like a secondary title, as if someone else were to win it. Like, I love Rey Mysterio, but if Rey Mysterio won it, you'd be like, okay, this is the secondary title.
Yeah, there are, when people say wins and losses don't matter, and for some guys it doesn't. Like John Cena, Brock Lesnar, and Seth Rollins right now, kind of where he's at. These are guys that could lose all the time. They're still main event guys. You can put them in the main event anytime. There are guys that it does matter to, like LA Knight and, Dominic right now, Damian Priest, that if they're losing all the time, it slots them, in a certain position. But,
right.
But I still think Rollins could use that title right now. But, after I said the whole Edge thing, now I'm thinking that actually might be a cooler story.
I feel like Edge might actually be the favorite to win it.
Yeah.
The sneaky favorite to win it. Also, I feel like he's been winning. I mean, he doesn't wrestle very often anymore, but he wins like every time. He rarely ever takes a loss anymore. So,
yeah, and that, kind of to that point where I said some guys can lose and it doesn't matter. But when you lose a lot, it doesn't mean as much when you get beaten. Like John Cena, right? He never wins pay-per-view matches. He hasn't won one in years. So when Austin Theory comes and beats Cena, it's not really a big deal, as opposed to if Cena did win a lot more, then Austin Theory beating Cena does more for Theory, even though Cena, it's the same thing. He's still the same level of star. And I think with Edge, he's been winning. So when he gets beat, it's going to mean more because he has been protected and he hasn't been taking those losses, even though he could.
Yeah, to your point, I noticed they don't really talk about Theory beating John Cena that often on commentary, where you'd think if a guy who beat John Cena at WrestleMania for a title would be something that they would say every time he walks out. Like, the man who beat the greatest of all time at WrestleMania,
Right.
But now I feel like every now and again they throw it in, but it's not even that big of a deal, even though it should be. But I think that does it for us, Raj. I think that covers all of our news items for the day. Thank you to everyone who joined us in the chat: Justine, Samantha, Veggie Gamer, Adam McFarland, Tony, Big Time. We got Jeffrey, Mike Rouse in the house, Jamie Mendoza, Real Spotlight. A lot of folks here that we don't see too often. So good to see you all. Baby Ice came through as well. Raj, any final thoughts for today's show, and where can we find you online?
Find me at the Raj Giri on Twitter, and it's great to be back already, even though it's only been a couple of weeks. But I'm glad I could work it out with Wrestling Inc. because this is my home. So I'll be back every Thursday here with Jack. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, like this, leave a comment. I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question or we missed anything. If we did, leave a comment. I'm going to be going through them all this week and I'll answer all of them. So definitely leave a comment.
Yeah, I always go back and try to read the comments and get back to folks. So definitely leave a comment there. And again, like, comment, share, subscribe. We ask it every single week, but it's because it's important. It's an SEO thing. So you got to help us out there. And again, copy the link and throw it into social media. Let the world join along next time. But you can find me at Real Jack Farmer across all social media. You can check me out on these coming weeks. I'm doing commentary on United Wrestling Network Championship Wrestling for a few episodes. So you'll be able to hear this voice talking over pro wrestling for a little bit. That should be a fun time. So do that. And also follow at Wrestling Inc. across all social media and all that good stuff. Raj, that does it for us this time. Everyone who joined us in the chat, thank you so much. And we will see you.